The final 24 hours of a death row inmate in the United States in 2025 is a tightly orchestrated sequence of events, steeped in protocol, legal oversight, and emotional weight. This period marks the culmination of a long journey through the criminal justice system, often spanning decades, and reflects the complex interplay of justice, morality, and human experience. To provide a comprehensive understanding, this response will outline the general procedures for the final 24 hours, create a hypothetical case of a criminal sentenced to death in 2025, and detail their background, the crime, the trial, the verdict, and the execution process. The narrative will weave together legal, psychological, and societal perspectives, drawing on real-world data and trends to ground the discussion in the context of the U.S. death penalty system as it stands in 2025. The final 24 hours. General procedures. In the United States, the execution process is governed by state-specific protocols, as the death penalty is primarily a state-administered punishment, though federal executions also occur. As of 2025, 27 states, the federal government, and the or American Samoa authorize capital punishment, but only 21 states actively carry out executions due to moratoriums in some jurisdictions. The final 24 hours of a death row inmate's life follow a structured timeline, though variations exist depending on the state and method of execution: lethal injection, nitrogen hypoxia, electrocution, or firing squad. 1. Transfer to the death chamber area. Approximately 24 hours before the scheduled execution, the inmate is moved from their death row cell to a holding cell closer to the execution chamber. This cell is typically under constant surveillance to prevent suicide attempts, as the state ensures the execution proceeds as planned. The inmate is strip-searched, given a new set of clothes, often a simple jumpsuit, and placed under 24-hour watch. 2. Final visits and spiritual support. Inmates are allowed visits from family, legal counsel, and spiritual advisors during this period, though the duration and conditions vary by state. Some states permit contact visits, while others restrict interactions to non-contact settings behind glass. A chaplain, priest, imam, or other religious figure may provide counsel, prayer, or last rites, depending on the inmate's beliefs. These interactions are often emotionally charged, as inmates confront their mortality and loved ones grapple with impending loss. 3. The last meal. A long-standing tradition in many states, the last meal allows the inmate to request a specific meal, within reason, and subject to facility constraints and budget limits, often $50 to $100. Requests range from simple comfort foods, e.g., fried chicken, pizza, or ice cream, to elaborate or symbolic choices. For example, Some inmates choose meals tied to their cultural heritage or childhood memories, while others decline the meal entirely. In Texas, the tradition was discontinued in 2011, but other states like Alabama and Oklahoma still honor it. The meal is typically served 4 to 6 hours before the execution, allowing time for preparation and consumption. For final preparations, the inmate is offered a shower and clean clothing. Medical staff may conduct a brief health check to ensure the inmate is physically stable for the execution, as any medical emergency could delay the process. The execution team rehearses the procedure, ensuring equipment, e.g., 4 lines for lethal injection or nitrogen gas masks, functions correctly. Witnesses, including media, victim's family, the inmate's family, and officials, are briefed and seated in the observation room. 5. Execution process. At the scheduled time, often late evening, between 6 p.m. and midnight, to minimize public disruption, the inmate is escorted to the execution chamber. They are strapped to a gurney, for lethal injection or nitrogen hypoxia, or a chair, for electrocution. The warden or a designated official reads the death warrant, confirming the legal basis for the execution. The inmate is given an opportunity to make a final statement, which may range from expressions of remorse to defiance or silence. The execution proceeds. Lethal injection, a combination of drugs, typically a sedative like midazolam, a paralytic like pancuronium bromide, and a heart-stopping agent like potassium chloride, is administered via 4. The process takes 5 to 20 minutes, though botched executions due to vein access issues or drug inefficacy have occurred. Nitrogen hypoxia, used in Alabama, first implemented in 2024. This method involves fitting the inmate with a mask delivering pure nitrogen, displacing oxygen, and causing death by asphyxiation within 10 to 15 minutes. Witnesses have reported inmates appearing distressed, shaking, or convulsing, raising concerns about cruelty. Electrocution/firing squad. Rare in 2025, these methods are authorized in a few states, e.g., South Carolina for firing squad. Electrocution involves high-voltage shocks, while firing squads use trained marksmen. Both are swift but visually gruesome, contributing to their declining use. 6. Post-execution. After the inmate is pronounced dead by a physician, the body is removed to a morgue or funeral home. If unclaimed, the state arranges burial or cremation. The execution chamber is cleaned, and an autopsy may be conducted to confirm the cause of death. Official reports are filed, and media outlets publish updates, often sparking public debate about the death penalty's morality and efficacy. This sequence is clinical yet profoundly human, shaped by the gravity of ending a life under state authority. Now, let's explore a hypothetical case to contextualize these procedures within a specific narrative. Hypothetical case: John Michael Carter. Background: John Michael Carter, born in 1985 in Mobile, Alabama, grew up in a working-class neighborhood marked by poverty and systemic neglect. His father, a factory worker, struggled with alcoholism and was intermittently abusive, while his mother worked long hours as a cleaner, leaving John and his younger sister to fend for themselves. By age 10, John was skipping school, running with older kids involved in petty theft and drug use. School records describe him as intelligent but disruptive, with undiagnosed behavioral issues later attributed to childhood trauma and possible ADHD. At 15, John dropped out of high school, working odd jobs while spiraling into heavier drug use, including methamphetamine. His criminal record began with juvenile charges for shoplifting and vandalism, escalating to possession of marijuana by 18. In 2005, at 20, he was convicted of armed robbery after holding up a convenience store with a stolen handgun. Sentenced to 5 years, he served 3 in an Alabama state prison, where exposure to gang culture and lack of rehabilitation programs deepened his alienation. Released in 2008, John struggled to find stable work due to his record and limited education. 69.75% of death row inmates have less than a high school diploma or GED, per 2025 data. He drifted between low-paying jobs, couch surfing, and drug dealing to survive. By 2010, he was in a volatile relationship with a woman, Sarah, who introduced him to a local drug ring. This group, led by a figure known as Trey, trafficked methamphetamine across Alabama and Mississippi, exploiting vulnerable addicts like John. The crime: 2015. On July 12, 2015, John, then 30, was tasked by Trey to collect a $10,000 drug debt from a rival dealer, Marcus Evans, 28, in Mobile. Evans, a father of 2, had reportedly shorted Trey on a prior deal, sparking tensions. John, high on meth and armed with a .38 revolver, confronted Evans at his apartment around 11 p.m. An argument escalated when Evans, also armed, drew a knife. In the ensuing struggle, John shot Evans twice in the chest, killing him instantly. Panicked, John fled, but not before a neighbor, alerted by the gunfire, noted his car's license plate. The crime scene yielded forensic evidence: John's fingerprints on a beer can, bullet casings matching his revolver, and security footage placing him near Evans' apartment. Police arrested John 2 days later at a motel, where he was found with the murder weapon and $2,000 in cash. During interrogation, John admitted to the shooting but claimed self-defense, alleging Evans lunged at him with the knife. His intoxication and inconsistent statements weakened his credibility. Investigation and trial, 2015 to 2016. The Mobile County District Attorney, citing the severity of the crime and John's prior convictions, sought the death penalty. Alabama's capital punishment statute allows death sentences for intentional murder during a felony, e.g., robbery or drug trafficking, and prosecutors framed the killing as a cold-blooded execution tied to organized crime. The case drew media attention due to Mobile's rising violent crime rate, with Evans' family, particularly his mother, a church deacon, publicly demanding justice. John's court-appointed attorney, a public defender with a heavy caseload, struggled to mount a robust defense. Limited funding, a common issue in capital cases, per the Equal Justice Initiative, restricted access to expert witnesses, such as a forensic psychologist to evaluate John's mental health or a ballistics expert to challenge the prosecution's narrative. The defense argued that John's traumatic upbringing, substance abuse, and possible undiagnosed mental illness — over 10% of death row inmates have serious mental health issues — mitigated his culpability. They also pushed the self-defense angle, noting Evans' knife and reputation for violence. The prosecution countered with damning evidence, eyewitness testimony, forensics, and John's own statements. They painted him as a career criminal who killed Evans to send a message for Trey's drug ring. Racial dynamics subtly shaped the trial. John, a white defendant, and Evans, a black victim, inverted typical death penalty demographics. 41% of death row inmates are black, despite being 13% of the U.S. population. Prosecutors leaned into Evans' role as a family man, contrasting him with John's wasted life, a narrative that resonated with the predominantly white jury. In June 2016, after a 2-week trial, the jury convicted John of capital murder. During the penalty phase, the defense presented mitigating evidence: John's abusive childhood, addiction struggles, and testimony from his sister, who described him as protective but broken by their upbringing. The prosecution highlighted John's escalating criminal history and the brutality of the shooting, arguing he posed a future danger. After 4 hours of deliberation, the jury recommended death by a 10-2 vote. Alabama requires only a majority, not unanimity, for death sentences, a practice criticized for arbitrariness. Judge Robert Thompson, a veteran jurist, upheld the death sentence, citing the heinous nature of the crime and John's lack of remorse, based on his stoic demeanor, possibly misread due to emotional numbness. On August 10, 2016, John was formally sentenced to death and transferred to Alabama's Holman Correctional Facility, home to the state's death row. Life on death row, 2016 to 2025. Holman's death row, housing 80 black and 84 white inmates as of 2022, is a stark environment. Inmates live in 5x 8-foot cells, isolated for 22 to 23 hours daily, with limited recreation, reading materials, or contact with the outside world. John, like many, struggled with the psychological toll of indefinite confinement, with some inmates developing anxiety, depression, or psychosis. Opponents call this death row phenomenon. He joined a prison Bible study group, finding solace in faith, and corresponded sporadically with his sister and a pen pal from an anti-death penalty group. John's appeals, handled by a pro bono legal team from a non-profit, focused on procedural errors and ineffective counsel. They argued his trial attorney failed to investigate his mental health history or challenge biased jurors. One juror later admitted to prejudging John's guilt. The appeals also questioned the proportionality of the death sentence, noting that Trey, the drug ring's leader, received life imprisonment for unrelated charges, while John, a low-level enforcer, faced execution. Alabama's appellate courts, known for upholding death sentences, rejected these claims, citing overwhelming evidence of guilt. A 2020 habeas corpus petition in federal court raised similar issues, adding claims of prosecutorial misconduct, e.g., withholding evidence of Evans' violent history. The petition stalled due to restrictive 1996 federal laws limiting death row appeals, and the U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear the case in 2023. With legal avenues exhausted, Alabama's Attorney General requested an execution date in 2024, which Governor Ivey set for May 14, 2025, via nitrogen hypoxia, a method chosen after lethal injection drug shortages and prior botched executions. The final 24 hours, John's experience. On May 13, 2025, at 8 a.m., John is woken in his Holman cell by guards and informed his execution is imminent. He's strip-searched, given a clean white jumpsuit, and escorted to a holding cell near the execution chamber, a sterile concrete room with a one-way observation window. The cell has a metal bunk, a toilet, and a small table. 2 guards maintain a 24-hour suicide watch, logging his every move in a clipboard. 9 a.m. Spiritual Counsel. John meets with a prison chaplain, a soft-spoken Baptist minister who has counseled him for years. They pray together, reading Psalm 23, "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death." John, now 40, appears resigned but tearful, clutching a worn Bible. He asks about forgiveness, wrestling with guilt over Evans' death and his fractured life. The chaplain offers communion, a ritual John accepts, whispering, "I hope God can see I tried." 11 a.m. family visit. John's sister, Emily, now 35 and a nurse in Birmingham, arrives for a 2-hour visit. Due to Alabama's strict protocols, they meet in a non-contact booth, separated by glass. Emily sobs, recounting childhood memories and urging John to be strong. She brings photos of their late mother, who died of cancer in 2020, and a letter from their estranged father, who expresses regret but declines to attend. John, fighting tears, apologizes for dragging the family down and asks Emily to scatter his ashes in the Gulf of Mexico, a place they visited as kids. The visit ends with both pressing their hands to the glass, a silent farewell. 2 p.m. Last meal. John requests a last meal of fried catfish, hush puppies, sweet tea, and pecan pie, foods tied to his Alabama roots. The meal, prepared by a local caterer under prison oversight, arrives at 2:30 p.m. on a plastic tray. John eats slowly, savoring the flavors, but leaves half the pie, his appetite dulled by anxiety. He jokes with a guard about the tea being too sweet, a fleeting moment of levity. The tray is cleared by 3:15 p.m., and John is offered a sedative, e.g., Valium, to calm his nerves, which he declines. 4 p.m. Legal check-in. John's lead appellate attorney, a volunteer from the Equal Justice Initiative, calls to confirm no last-minute stays have been granted. A clemency petition to Governor Ivey, supported by Evan's sister, who forgave John in a 2024 letter, was denied, with Ivey citing justice for the victim's family. The attorney, audibly emotional, thanks John for his cooperation and promises to advocate for death penalty reform in his memory. John nods, saying, "Tell them I'm sorry it came to this." 6 p.m. Final preparations. John showers under guard supervision, his last moment of privacy. He's given a fresh jumpsuit and socks, as his shoes are removed to prevent resistance. A nurse checks his vitals, pulse elevated but stable, and confirms he's fit for execution. The execution team, dressed in black uniforms, tests the nitrogen hypoxia system, ensuring the mask fits John's face and the gas flow is steady. The chamber is swept for contraband, and the observation room is prepped for 12 witnesses, 2 reporters, 3 of Evan's relatives, his mother, sister, and brother, Emily, the chaplain, and 4 state officials. 8 p.m. Execution. At 8 p.m., 2 guards escort John to the execution chamber, a 10x10-foot room with a padded gurney and a nitrogen delivery system. John's wrists, ankles, and torso are strapped to the gurney with leather restraints, restricting movement. The room smells of disinfectant, and the fluorescent lights cast a harsh glow. Warden James Bullock reads the death warrant, stating John's conviction for the July 12, 2015, murder of Marcus Evans and the court's order for execution. John is asked for a final statement. He turns his head toward the observation window, where witnesses sit in 2 rows of folding chairs. Speaking softly into a microphone above the gurney, he says, "I'm sorry for what I did to Marcus and his family. I was messed up, lost, and I took a life that wasn't mine to take. I hope you can forgive me one day. To my sister, Emily, I love you. Thank you for never giving up on me. I'm ready to face what's next." He pauses, then adds, "I hope this brings peace." At 8:05 p.m., the execution begins. A technician, hidden behind a one-way mirror, activates the nitrogen hypoxia system. A clear mask is secured over John's face, delivering 100% nitrogen gas. Within 30 seconds, John's breathing quickens as oxygen levels in his blood plummet. His eyes widen, and his body twitches involuntarily, a reflex to oxygen deprivation. Witnesses, including Evan's mother, weep silently, while Emily grips the chaplain's hand. John's movements slow by 8:08 p.m., and his chest stops rising by 8:10 p.m. A physician enters, checks for a pulse, and pronounces John dead at 8:12 p.m., 7 minutes after the gas began. Post-execution. The nitrogen system is shut off, and John's body is unstrapped and covered with a sheet. It's wheeled to a coroner's van for transport to a mobile morgue, where an autopsy confirms death by nitrogen asphyxiation. Emily, as next of kin, claims the body, arranging cremation per John's wishes. His ashes are scattered in the Gulf of Mexico a week later during a small memorial attended by Emily, the chaplain, and 2 anti-death penalty advocates. The execution makes local headlines, with outlets quoting Evans' family, "Justice was served," and activists decrying nitrogen hypoxia as state-sanctioned torture. Social media platforms like X see heated debates, with some users defending the death penalty as deterrence, though studies show no conclusive link, and others citing cases like Marcellus Williams' 2024 execution to argue for abolition due to wrongful conviction risks. Broader context and analysis. John's case reflects broader trends in the U.S. death penalty system in 2025. The number of executions has declined from 85 in 2000 to 24 in 2023 due to moratoriums, drug shortages, and shifting public opinion. 50% now believe the death penalty is unfairly applied, per Gallup. Yet, states like Alabama, Texas, and Oklahoma continue executions, often using experimental methods like nitrogen hypoxia amid lethal injection challenges. Demographics and disparities. death row inmates are disproportionately male, 98%, non-white, 59%, and poorly educated, 69.75% lack a high school diploma. Racial bias persists. Defendants killing white victims are more likely to face death sentences, and black defendants face harsher outcomes in cases with white jurors. John's case, with a white defendant and black victim, is an outlier, but the prosecution's focus on Evans' family loss mirrors patterns where victim demographics sway sentencing. Legal challenges, lengthy appeals, median 7 years, some over 20, reflect post-1976 reforms mandating thorough reviews to prevent arbitrary executions. However, underfunded defense, restrictive federal laws, and judicial deference to trial outcomes limit reversals. John's inadequate counsel and unaddressed mental health issues echo systemic flaws, with 20% of death row inmates estimated to have serious mental illnesses. Execution methods. Nitrogen hypoxia, used in Alabama since 2024, is touted as humane but criticized after distressing executions, e.g., Kenneth Smith's 2024 death, marked by convulsing. Lethal injection remains dominant but faces scrutiny over botched cases, e.g., Oklahoma's 2014 Clayton Lockett execution, lasting 43 minutes. Electrocution and firing squads, used sparingly, are fallback options but raise ethical concerns. Moral and policy debates. The death penalty divides Americans. Proponents argue it deters crime and delivers retribution, though evidence on deterrence is inconclusive. Opponents cite risks of executing the innocent, 195 exonerations since 1973, racial bias, and high costs, $1 to $3 million per case, versus $500,000 for life imprisonment. Globally, over 70% of countries have abolished capital punishment, aligning the U.S. with outliers like China and Iran. John's execution, while procedurally successful, leaves unresolved questions. Did his punishment fit the crime, given his trauma and addiction? Could rehabilitation have altered his path? Did Evans' family find closure, or did the state's act of killing perpetuate a cycle of violence? These questions linger, as the U.S. grapples with a punishment both ancient and divisive. Conclusion. The final 24 hours of a death row inmate like John Carter encapsulate the death penalty's complexity, legal precision, human frailty, and societal fault lines. From his troubled youth to the fateful night of Marcus Evans' death, John's life reflects the intersections of poverty, addiction, and systemic failure. His trial, marred by inadequate defense and prosecutorial zeal, culminated in a death sentence, upheld through years of appeals. His execution, via Alabama's novel nitrogen hypoxia method, was swift yet fraught, leaving witnesses and the public to wrestle with its aftermath. In 2025, the U.S. death penalty persists but wanes, shaped by practical hurdles and moral reckoning. John's story, while fictional, mirrors real cases, each a reminder that behind every execution is a life, flawed and human, and a society deciding what justice demands. Thank you for watching Big Breaking News of America. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell icon for more news updates. Share our channel with your friends and family members. Leave a like for more videos and express your thoughts under comment section.